Hello, Internet! Welcome to Two and a Half Brains. This is the latest episode of Survivor Season 42, Episode 2. Can break it all down here, talk all about it. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. Like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Pavement Road Productions. You can email the show directly, pavementroadproductions@gmail.com. That's facebook.com/Pavement Road Prod. Look it up, subscribe. Share the post, tell your friends. Break it all down here, talk all about it. This is the latest episode of Survivor Season 42, Episode 2. Break it all down here. Start with the 3 moments that mattered. Talk about who did not survive the vote. And then talk about the top 3 players and bottom 3 players from the week. And talk about which player got knocked out in my power rankings for this week. So, spoiler, it was pretty close. It was a week for the power rankings for sure. So, let's go ahead and start here. We're going to start with the 3 moments that mattered. Moment number 1 is Silent Idol. So, it was a very average episode of the show. I mean, it wasn't like, there's not a ton that happened this week. But one thing that did happen was the fact that Mike went out and found an idol. So, Mike found an idol, and he buried it and lost it. Couldn't remember where he buried it. And then found it. And it looks like next week in the preview he's going to lose it again. Which is, I'm surprised those happen more often. Like, you're sleep deprived, you bury the idol, whatever. You don't necessarily, mark it because you don't want anybody looking for it there, And I don't necessarily know if he'll bury it. I mean, obviously, you don't want to keep it in your bag or on your purse and whatever, but, I mean, there's got to be a place you can put it where it's not like, where you're not going to find it. I don't know. I mean, hide it somewhere closer to camp or something. I don't know. Or at least, again, at the very least, know where you found it. But, of course, it's a 3-way shared idol. And he found it. He said something told him not to put it back. So he opened it. Of course, curiosity is always going to kill a cat. He opened it. And, of course, it's the 3-way shared idol. So, of course, he loses his vote until all the idols are activated. And they all say the phrase at the same challenge for the idol to be activated before the merge. So, his phrase was something like, "The grace of soccer brings me to tears, it makes me want to cry." And it's funny because he's a football coach and hates soccer, so it's really pretty hilarious. But he said he wasn't going to tell anybody about the idol. And, of course, not being able to vote kind of changes things, which is true. So he went and told his ally, Jenny, and then told Daniel. So, I get it, you're going to tell one person, tell a smart person in Jenny. Then I told another smart person, Daniel, and Jenny's his ally. Daniel is aligned closer with Chanel. So he's going to try to take advantage of that information, and if you can keep Mike around, great. Either way, but he knows the information, and he doesn't have the risk of not being able to vote. So he feels like it's a really good spot, which of course it is. Knowing where the idols are is definitely is almost always better than having, in a lot of cases, it's better than having an idol yourself. Obviously, if you can save yourself with it, but knowing where they are, knowing how to move, negotiate around them is a good thing, for sure. And Daniel, we'll talk about him a little bit later as well, coming up here, but he knew that, if he could either vote out Mike, or just keep Mike from saying the phrase and tell Mike, hey, I wouldn't even try to activate it now because people will, find out, might get suspicious that you're saying the same phrase every week, and that type of thing. Or somebody else knows who has that might know that you have it, so you want to keep it under wraps. So you're trying to have Mike not say the phrase so it doesn't get activated, so he can't vote. Obviously, if they lose the challenges and he can't vote, it's going to be tough for him. But he definitely kind of reminds me a little bit of Brad from last season, anyways, where doesn't get the idol activated and then goes out with it, without being able to vote. So, it's definitely a risk, and finding it this early, its odds are that other people aren't going to find it, at least for a little bit. So it's probably gonna be a couple votes until you can do it. Obviously, Xander had a couple votes where he couldn't vote as well, and then they won a couple challenges, so that helped. But that's interesting play for Daniel. Hey, just don't worry about activating it. You're good for a while. You won't need to activate it for a while. And then if he needs to, we can always slip it in and vote him out, and then the idol's not active. Obviously, finding an idol, at this point, we'll talk about too with Marianne, but finding an idol after the immunity challenge is as useless as possible at this point, because you have to activate and you lose your vote. Well, you can't activate until the immunity challenge, so you literally lose all you do finding after the immunity challenge is lose your vote at a minimum, especially if you lose. So that's definitely, we'll talk about that come up here in a little bit, but the first one, of course, was Silent Idol, and the plan is, of course, to keep Mike from talking about his idol, to keep him from getting activated. And now for number 2 moment, I'm going to talk about the photo finish that was the immunity challenge. Obviously, there's only one challenge. It was for immunity and reward. You get fishing gear or a smaller set of fishing gear with the immunity idol. Obviously, you lose your flint, which is still stupid, but they're still doing it. So it was a challenge where they're blindfolded. They had to walk through obstacles blindfolded, one caller telling directing them through a lot of groin shots, a lot of head shots, a lot of banging your knee and stuff. It was definitely funny. The comedy of errors type of the show where they fall off things and hurt themselves slightly. One of those Wipeout type shows. So it was pretty funny. Lydia did a really good job in the caller part, and then her team ended up still leaving or getting to the puzzle last. And then, obviously, so they had to go through the obstacle course, grab all the puzzle pieces, get back with the puzzle pieces, and then take them to the spot to do the puzzle. And they still had to be blindfolded, so the caller basically had to lead them through the obstacle course all as a group, and then have 2 of them put together the puzzle while they're blindfolded while she directed them. It wasn't too crazy of a puzzle, but the puzzle's always a great equalizer, right? The puzzle or the carnival game. So Lydia's team left last, and then got to the all pieces last, even though she did a pretty good job calling, and then they got to the puzzle station last, and then still finished first, which was crazy. But all three, this was one of the rare challenges where all 3 teams were within minutes of each other of finishing. It was very, very close. The callers were Drea, Lydia, and Jonathan, and it was very very interesting. Went back and forth, and ultimately, within basically all 3 teams had 2 or 1 pieces left in the puzzle, and then obviously green team finished first. And then the blue team finished, and the purple and the orange team was last. And they had to go to tribal council. So they were losing a second member. Obviously, Jackson got pulled last week, and now they had to vote somebody out. So the first actual vote out after having somebody pulled. So now they're going to be down to 4 members. But a very, 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 I can't remember a challenge that was that close. And again, there's editing and like that, but there was within all 3 teams were within a minute or 2 of each other. And usually there's 2 teams that are close. The first and second place teams or second and third place teams are close. But it's very, very rare that you could be 2 minutes from being first and it being last. And that's what happened in this case. So very, very close challenge. But ultimately, the purple team lost. Moment number 3 that mattered was the second shot. So the second week in a row, the shot in the dark was taken. And this is the 3rd time it's happened. Obviously, Sydney last season, Adam, I always call him Adam, Zach. He looks like Adam Klein. Zach last episode, and then Mariah this episode. And Mariah took a shot in the dark, and I was curious to see what was going to happen. I know, obviously, Marianne didn't know if she'd be able to play her extra vote, or wasn't sure if she'd be able to give me the vote because she got the extra vote last time. But she wasn't sure if she was going to get the extra vote or lose her vote based on the journey they had the last episode. And so she didn't know until she got tribal council that she did get the vote and she got the extra vote. And Mariah played her shot in the dark. And for the 3rd time in a row, shot in the dark came back as not safe. And I believe this is the first time because she actually handed it to Jeff, and Jeff opened it. So I thought it was going to come back as safe. But it came back as not safe. So she didn't get the vote to play the shot in the dark, and then the votes came down the same way as it did last week for Zach, minus one person who didn't get minus one person being out. So Zach went out 5-0 last week. This week, similar result as Mariah went out 4-0. So we'll talk about this next. What happened with Mariah? What went wrong, and who'd have to have the vote? Mariah getting knocked out of the vote here. Obviously, her brother passed away from COVID as a nurse in New York. So obviously they did a little tribute to all the thank you to all the first responders and everything like that, all the medical personnel, everything who was helping with COVID and everything. Definitely, and we definitely feel for her. But what did she do wrong in the game, right? So she didn't want to try to be the mom, trying to try to be just do her own thing and play the game for herself. All those things, great. But it seemed like it took her a while to open up to her tribe. Like obviously it came down to Jonathan's close with Lindsay and Omer, and it's really crazy that Jonathan and Omer have that. It's like the Ty and Caleb of it all, or maybe it's Steven and JT, but it seems more like Caleb and Ty, more than anything else. But it was interesting. I mean, those three are together, so it's like, all right, it's gonna be either Marianne, the two who aren't as aligned, it's either Marianne or it's Mariah, and it's cool because they have to show Omer writing Mary, Mary, and then it was either Mariah, or it was gonna be Mary Ann. So they could have showed, I guess, the A after it, but because they both were Mary A, and then one was just Mariah with an A, and one was Marianne, with an N and E after it. So that was cool. But it seemed to me like obviously when it comes down to Marianne or Mariah, Marianne's at 100, and Mariah was kind of like we've had enough of this already. She's over the top. She's really annoying. It's hard to be starving, have somebody who's this hyper all the time, and this excited all the time, and this high energy all the time, and we're all like, and that's certainly true. I certainly get that. And it came down to, Marianne, who's very transparent, and Mariah, who's pretty guarded. And I get that because I'm somebody, I talk on the internet, but in real life, I definitely am more of an introvert. So certain situations, I definitely don't feel comfortable talking and having conversations and talking in groups, stuff like that, in some situations. So I get that it's hard to open up, but at the point you gotta get out there, you gotta open up right away and have deep conversations as soon as possible. It took her till pretty much day 5 to really open up to her tribe and tell them about her brother and everything else. And Marianne, even though she's over the top, they know what they're getting. They know she's not gonna hide anything from them. She went out looking for an idol, which at that point, after the challenge was over, she was looking for an idol, and thank goodness for her sake she didn't find it, because she would have lost her vote. That wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have ended up mattering ultimately, but she did have a little bit of like, oh, maybe we can't trust her. Maybe that was the first time maybe they couldn't trust her, but ultimately Mariah didn't open up. Really, it took a while to open up, and it came down to who's gung ho about the team, and who's who can we trust, and they had to make sure they want either one of them to play the shot in the dark. They had to basically look them in the face and lie to them that they're fine, so they didn't play the shot in the dark and screw up the plan. And I think too, ultimately, I mean, it wouldn't have mattered if Mariah played her shot in the dark, because if she played her shot in the dark, Marianne's going home anyways, so none of the three were going to go home. But and obviously she played the shot in the dark, so she wouldn't have been able to vote anyways. But if she was safe, then they would have had to revoke. All 4 votes would have been canceled, and they probably just vote up Marianne. So it was in Marianne's interest for Marianne not to be safe or play shot in the dark. But it's what it came down to, and Marianne's very gung ho, very excited, and everything like that. I just think she seems like a very nice person. She seems like she's a family person, a mom, and likes to take care of her kids, and seems like a very nice person. But I think she just got beat to the punch as far as opening up. And the other 3 people made an alliance in a tribe of 6, and then it was her and Marianne on the outs. And if it was much of a difference in the challenges, really couldn't really tell if which one was really better at the challenges. Maybe Mariah a little bit, but she just didn't. Again, it took her too long to open up and really play a social game. And, Marianne, even though she's, definitely a lot to handle out there, they know what they're getting with Marianne. And Mariah being a little bit, coy, a little bit quieter, they didn't really know if they could trust her. I think that's what happened, and I think that's ultimately where Mariah went wrong, and I think that's why she got voted out today. Obviously, I just watched the episode, so it's pretty fresh. We're talking all about it here, pretty immediate reaction. But I'm going to go ahead now and talk about, and of course, and Mariah being voted out, 16th person, out, so 16th place, I guess you can say. Third person out, second person, I guess, voted out. So she finished 16th, and in my power rankings, I had her finishing 17th. So a good week for the power rankings this week. I'm also going to talk about the top 3 and bottom 3 and where I had them placing as well. So that's interesting. But obviously last week, my number 5 went out, 17th, which was Zach. And then Jackson as well got knocked out. I had Jackson going out 14th. So my 5th and my 14th are both gone. And now my 17th is gone. So with that being said, let's go and talk about the top 3 and bottom 3 of the week. We'll start with it was a pretty straightforward episode, so I really don't want to go too much into it or spend a whole lot of time retreading the same ground. It was very, very straightforward episode. The only thing I really didn't talk about was Hai. They got some crabs and they cooked the crab and ate it, and it wasn't much there. But he says he's vegetarian, likes to he's very much an animal person and doesn't want to see animals get hurt or anything. And he says out here he has to eat something, so he ate the crab. He felt bad about it, but he had to eat the crab to survive. And of course, that's the thing. Maybe it's pandering for the CM money. I really don't know. But either way, I don't know. The CM award is still a thing after last season. I really don't know. But that was really the only thing that happened that wasn't too. The really only thing that happened that we didn't talk about. So let's go talk about the top 3, bottom 3. Start with the bottom 3 this week, as always. And in the bottom 3, I have Drea. So Drea, she's my number. I think she's my number 3. I'm gonna double check on that right now. But she was in the top last week, and yeah, she was number 3. She was in the top 3 last week. I think she was actually number 1 last week. And the only reason I have her here right now, honestly, is because she has the amulet advantage, and she got the extra vote at the last tribal council, and she's aligned with Romeo and with Roxroy, but she wanted to do a girls' alliance, so she wanted Shwati and Tori to kind of talk about a girls' alliance, and Tori's like, yeah, we definitely should do that. That's something we should, definitely I've been thinking about that for the whole time, and then Shwati's like, yeah, we'll definitely do it, and they kind of talked like, I really don't trust her. I don't know. She's got a lot of advantages. She seems like she's gonna be a pretty tough player to beat. So I don't know if we want to keep her. I think we should maybe get rid of her. And that was of course something in the preview last week. So of course it didn't amount to anything because they didn't even go to travel. But I will say that somewhat transparently playing both sides is definitely not a good thing. Obviously she has alliance with those 2 guys. If those 2 sides talk, she's in big trouble, right? Because the trust will be completely gone. So, it's one of those things where you got to build bonds, but you don't want to necessarily build alliances until you need them, right? So if you go to tribal council, say, hey, I have this extra vote, I can use it, and we'll do a girls thing, But doing that pretty much the next day after tribal council is really not necessarily a good move, because again, now they have time for that story to come out, and especially if they didn't go to tribal council, so there's another day and then another day, for what you told them to come out. Maybe they don't trust those people. Maybe you just lie about it and say it didn't happen. But starting to talk about, let's get rid of Romeo or Roxroy. You're aligned with them, right? And that's why I didn't like the fact that they she was willing to get out Roxroy last week. Romeo had to talk her out of it, and ended up going with Zach, and then it was. This week, she was again flipping on the alliance, and it just seems like she's really trying to overplay a little bit, and it's troubling. It could be a bad thing for her. She's my number 3 pick, obviously. I can see her doing really well, and she seems like she can, but I worry a little bit that she might overplay and could get herself knocked out for that reason. And so definitely cautious. Definitely she needs to be cautious here. Obviously, the amulet advantage, we'll see what that ends up being for her. She has the extra vote again. And everybody always gets these. It's been a crazy, last couple seasons. I mean, what happened to having advantages, just keeping them to yourself? Obviously, the idols, three-way idols, pretty public. You have to say the phrase and like that. But all these other advantages, and they're kind of making them get advantages out in the open. Obviously, the amulet advantage about that, and they know they have to make a decision together if you get the extra vote or whatever. So people are gonna know you have the advantages, but at some point, keep something to yourself, because if I didn't love Ben's season, but the thing I learned about Ben's season, the thing we learned about Ben's season is knowledge is currency, information is currency. So if you have information, that's powerful. Don't give it up without getting something in return. Don't give up knowledge without getting something in return, because knowledge is the most important thing you're gonna have in the game. So definitely not a great week for Drea. And again, they could flip on her. Maybe they'll try to blow up her game, and she'll flip back. I mean, she's in the middle right now, which is theoretically a good position to be in, unless the two sides talk to each other, right? If the two sides talk to each other, now you're squeezed, and you're in trouble. But who knows? Who knows which way it's going to go? But it's a little bit risky, and definitely I don't like her taking that risk without getting really much in return. Talking about the extra vote, the idols advantages, and you didn't even go tribal, so you don't really need to talk about who you want to get rid of. I don't know why she doesn't like Rox quite so much, but for some reason she would want to get rid of him. I don't know. Anyways, number 2 in the bottom 3, I am going to have to go with Mike. So Mike is my number 16. So I don't have high hopes for him anyways. But Mike, he's the 58-year-old retired firefighter from New Jersey. He found the idol. He buried the idol, lost the idol, found it again. But he told Jenny, told Daniel about it, because he wants to help them to help him use it and blah blah blah. But he's getting completely outmaneuvered by everybody else. I was worried about him. I knew he'd be decent in challenges and like that, and that's great. But he's very. He's just not. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like he's really making good decisions. Who he's trusting, and obviously Jenny's his number 1, but there's 3 pairs, so it doesn't matter. If you have a number 1, there's 4 other people in the tribe, right? If you have a strong pair, if the other 2 pairs line against you, you're done. Obviously he's been kind of scattered, kind of all over the place, and I don't really know what to make of him at this point. I mean, so they've been decent in the challenges, which is good. The tribe's been doing really well. They've pretty much dominated, but I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about it. I mean, he's to me, he's he's very loyal. He wants to tell everybody what's going on. He wants to be very straight up and honest and everything like that. That's good, but that helps build bonds. But I'm not feeling it. I don't think he's doing a good job. I don't think he's making good decisions in who he's trusting. And obviously, he lost the advantage and he found it and like that. And it's one of those things where sometimes you see this, it's cautionary. Well, they don't usually caution you a lot in Survivor about an advantage, right? So sometimes maybe heeding that warning might be a good thing. But either way, it was kind of he was kind of all over the place with that idol, and I think he's gonna definitely get outmaneuvered. He's too loyal. He doesn't seem he's that savvy about the game, and I just see him getting outmaneuvered. I see him going out pre-merge at this point. He could they could keep winning, and then he doesn't have to worry about it. But there's no swap or anything like that, and if that tribe does go to tribal council, I just don't see him. I don't see him getting too far. I just don't see it. So we'll see. He still has the idol, but he can't vote until he can't vote until he activates it, and they're trying to talk about how to activating it. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of it, but we'll see. We'll see. Next, the bottom 3. Number 1, of course, is Marianne. Very easily could have gone out today. She's number 18. She's from Ontario, the seminary student. She's my number 18 pick, so I have very low hope for her winning the game. But obviously she's very fun, very fun character. I couldn't see her going out this early just because, based on the edit, because she's such a huge character. I could see her going out right around the merge, a little before the merge, maybe, next week if they lose again, she's gone next week. I would be surprised. But the tribes are pretty evenly matched, unlike other seasons. So they may not lose again. They may get coached right through, and she's there till the merge and beyond. And when she gets to the merge, her threat level goes down, and like that. But obviously she's likable. All the tribes like her, and they got to the mat for the challenge. They found out that Zach got voted out, and she was like, oh, and they're talking about how she had a crush on Zach. So she said that Zach's like everything that she, Zach's the kind of guy she likes. They're talking about voting her out and sending her to Ponderosa to hang out with Zach, which is really funny. And all the other tribes talking about how funny it was, how adorable it was, and so that could certainly raise her threat level for sure. But I just think she's over the top. I think people are gonna get annoyed sooner rather than later, because again, you're starving, you're tired, and this person's just going 1,000 miles a minute. You're just gonna be like, okay, shut up. So I'm definitely very concerned for her for that reason. And again, I think they lose another challenge. I'd be shocked if she makes it. I'll be really surprised if she makes it past another vote before a swap or a merge. I'd be very, very surprised. So she's very excited, very hyper, very excitable. Not in an alliance right now, and I just don't think she's definitely naive. She's only 24 years old, so definitely not. And her tribe's not older, but they're all a little more established. Between the gap between 25 and 30 is decent. It's a little bit of a gap. Especially being a student and everything like that, and not having a ton of social interaction. I never really had high hopes for her. I'm super excited that she's really good TV. She reminds me a little bit of like a combination of like Wendy and Reem from Edge of Extinction. Wendy was crazy, high energy, and not bad at challenges. Marianne's the same way. They're definitely a similar archetype, I think. And then Reem, who is out early, not a good player, but incredibly entertaining. And I kind of feel like that's where Marianne is. So not high hopes for her. And they said this week she survived, which is good. They all voted her with her. But I don't think, I think if it was one of those things where it came down to it, and, like I said, if Mariah was safe, and then all the votes were canceled, and they had to revote, I don't think they would have broke a sweat, get rid of Marianne. I mean, obviously everybody loves her, and they talk about, how they love it's a family of 5, and they love Mariah, they love Marianne, they have to decide, they can't decide who they want to get rid of, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, I think they, if it's like, well, if it couldn't be Mariah and it had to be Marianne, I don't think they would have lost too much sleep over it, even though the other members of the other tribes might have been disappointed because she's high energy and very entertaining, and that we would have been losing out for having an entertaining player on our show on our screen. Ultimately, entertaining, yes. A good player, I don't think so. I don't see it. So moving on to the top 3, we'll talk about player number 3 here in the top 3 this week. And this one, I'm going to actually have to go. I think Swati did a good job. I think she's doing pretty well. Tori is kind of on the fence for me. She could do well. I think like Romeo was talking about how she should go next. Tori, because whatever. He wants to get rid of Tori, and so I could see her doing really well, or I could see her getting bounced pretty soon. She definitely seems like who could flame out pre-merge, or who could make a decent run in the game. So it depends. It really depends. It's really going to depend on the durée of it all. But I'm going to actually go a little bit differently this time, and I was actually going to go Lydia here. I was going to go Lydia, She did really well in the challenges. I'm not seeing a ton from her, but again, she's in a pair. She works with Hai. After he got quote unquote injured in the opening challenge, we had the fake blood and mud all over him. They built a bond, and so that's a pair on that tribe. And she did really well commanding her team in the challenge, and definitely did a good job there. I'm actually going to go with Jonathan though. Second week in a row, I'm going to go with Jonathan, or at least mentioned him, for the same reason. He's impressing me every week. He's definitely a big, physically imposing guy. He's really strong. He's good in challenges, and he was the leader in this challenge. Didn't win, but he didn't do a bad job. I don't think the loss because of him. It was very, very close. And he's socially, he owns his own business, so he has to be social. And the thing about him though is he knows he's not that strategic. Like, not being strategic is bad, but knowing it, at least you can plan for it. And that's why he's like, him and Omer are working together, and they have the bromance, the Tai and Caleb bromance. Worked a little better for Tai than it did for Caleb. And he's obviously, Jonathan is the Caleb in this case, but he's my number 11 pick. He's right in the middle of the pack for me. I see him going out right around the merge, but he's social, which is good, and he's not strategic, but he has Omer. So if him and Omer can work together, he said him and Omer together, they complement each other, right? One is very physical, and Omer said, "I'm his brain shield. He's my meat shield," and that's they one can protect, Jonathan is social, and so is Omer. Jonathan definitely more social and good in challenges, so they're not going to come after Omer for being too physically strong because Jonathan's there, and they're not going to go after Jonathan for being too strategic because Omer's there. They kind of protect each other, and so it's a really good alliance. I really like it. Obviously, the more strategic one, depending on the jury, usually ends up outmaneuvering the other one. But if the jury, again, depending on the jury, they could, if they're both there at the end, it's usually the more likable, physical one. The Steven JT of it all, right? JT wins because Steven, is not as charismatic. And they both basically did the same thing, even though, JT's played twice and has done terrible both times. Without Steven, because Steven's the one who keeps the strategy, keeps JT from running off and doing dumb things. It makes the strategic decisions that gets them both to the end. JT does the challenges and the charm, and so it's good for Jonathan. It's good that he realized that he's not the sharpest, he's not the best, most strategic, but he has that kind of other component within Omer that can kind of keep him going. So that was really cool, and he's doing a way better job than I thought he was going to do. I still don't necessarily, not really say he's winning this game or anything like that, but he's aware enough to know what he doesn't know, and that's really important. And then to see how he's perceived, he can kind of tell how he's perceived, and that's a really strong thing. I didn't expect him to be. I expected him to just become a complete idiot, goes out there and picks stuff up, puts it down, and gets voted out when they don't need him anymore. And if he's able to build a good bond with his charisma, and has the other component there with his partner being the strategist, that can be really, really dynamic, and that could help them both go really far. So that's why I have him there. Number 2, so top 3, number 2 here is actually my number 2 pick, which is Omer. So Omer is my number 2 this week, and similar reason. I mean, obviously he built a bond. Talk about his faith, and how he, and even Marianne made him a palm. We've used some palms so he could do his prayer. He didn't have obviously a prayer mat, but he could use the palms as a prayer mat, and which is really neat. And he built that really good bond with his tribe. And I said him and Jonathan are in really good shape together. And obviously they have Lindsay there as their third, so she's doing well too. But Omer is really got a good core, and we'll see if they can keep it together. Obviously, they really don't want to lose too many more challenges, but if they can, if they lose one more, they can maybe lose Marianne and still be okay. But it's a solid group, and Omer is the one who's really kind of leading that charge. So, again, if he goes to the end with Jonathan, he's gonna have to say why he made the moves, and why Jonathan was just kind of there, floating along, because he could lose to Jonathan, or he may need to get rid of him later on. But for right now, it's a good group, a good group of three. I really like those who are aligned right now. I mean, it's last time I did the power rankings and everything, it was David versus Goliath, and like everybody who I thought was going to do well, like they went top 6, all made the merge. And a lot of them worked together, a lot of them were aligned, right, and helped each other out. So it was really, really cool, and I like when the good players work together, at least for a while. Obviously, you can't take them all at the end, because you'll lose, but I like when the good players stick together. And that seems like what they're doing here. So we'll see who comes out of it, and if they keep losing challenges, it's not going to matter. But I don't see them, like I said, they don't seem like a Dodo tribe who can't keep it going. I think they're a good enough tribe to win enough to stay in it. Next, so player of the week this week, I am going to go with my number 4 pick, which is Daniel. And Daniel, again, he's got the only difference between him and Omer. Daniel has his number 1, which is Chanel. Mike really trusts him. I feel like Lydia trusts him. I feel like Hai trusts him. I feel like Jenny trusts him. Because they worked on that challenge back on the beach on day 1. Together, and Daniel was working hard, and he's been doing well in the challenges, the strategic parts of it, and whatever. So I think he's in really good shape, and the only really difference between him and Omer right now, obviously they both have a strong alliance with a couple other good solid players. The only difference I think between them right now is Daniel's tribes have been winning, and obviously we've seen winning early does usually mean good things. I mean, usually if you avoid the first couple tribal councils, you have numbers going to the merge. I mean, it worked out for Erica, right? She didn't go to tribal council the whole pre-merge, and then had immunity at the merge, and then had her options. She had and she ended up kind of turning on her old tribe, but she had her options, and that's always what you want, and you want to have the numbers. And we've seen it happen too, where it's a very dysfunctional, where it's Tandang, right? They got picked off because there were 6 of them, and they couldn't work together, so they got picked off, and they didn't go to tribal council and forge those bonds and whatever. But if the group stays strong, I haven't really seen anything that makes me believe that they're gonna crack. So if you're in a strong group, you're popular within that group, and you have information. I mean, that's the biggest thing right now. He has information, at least some, maybe not all of it. He doesn't know about Hai's advantage necessarily, but but he knows he has good bonds, and he knows where some of the advantages are, and that's a huge thing. It's very, very big for the game, and for knowing where all the advantages are is a lot of times better than having them yourself, and having bonds with everybody is better. Like I said, I mean, if it came down to it, for me, I think we talked about with the advantage from last week with the 3 of them getting it in the first challenge. For me, I think having allies is more important than having an advantage. If you have they said if you get rid of everybody else, if all the other people who have the advantage are gone, it turns into an idol for you. Okay, I would rather have 2 allies than 1 idol. I would trade 1 idol for 2 allies every day. And especially knowing where the idols are and knowing who has them and all that. An idol's gonna save you for one day, an ally will save you forever. And so I'd rather forgo an idol, and granted, obviously, if he decides he wants to go to Mike, he can do that, and then he'll know kind of about the advantages and about the idol, and he'll know, hey, maybe I don't want it if I don't need it, don't grab, so all that information, all that knowledge that you're getting from the different players is gonna help inform your game. And he said he was really worried about being able to make bonds and like that. It seems like he's doing well. Obviously, he didn't have to vote, had to go travel yet, so Rubber hasn't met the road yet. But I think he's in a good spot so far, and I think he's in a good spot on a good team, right? And that's really where you want to be. You could be Shan and Ricard last season were in a really tight pair, and they kind of fractured a little bit, but they were neither one of them was going to get voted out before the merge because they got down to two people, and they were always going to keep each other. I mean, between JD and Brad and Jeannie, they were always going to keep each other. It was always going to be Ricard and Shan. No matter who else was there, it was going to be those two sticking together. So they were in a good spot, but they were in a good spot on a bad tribe. They were in a good spot and they kept losing. So they weren't going to go home when they went to tribal council, but they kept going to tribal council, and then at the end of the day, they only had each other left. Whereas if you're in a spot like Daniel or even Shan or whatever, or Chanel or Jenny, any of them, Lydia, if you're in a good spot with like them, at least you're in a good spot on a good tribe. And I feel like Daniel is kind of the one who's going between all the alliances. He's got his tightest pair with Chanel. I don't really think anybody really knows he's tight with Chanel, which is huge. And he's kind of being able to bounce around. I mean, like I said, Mike's bringing him into the fold and everything like that. So obviously, if Mike's bringing him in, I'm sure Jenny will bring him in. And I think he could probably go over to High and to Lydia and be like, hey, we're the young people, let's stick together. And I think that would be, I think he's in a good spot in a good tribe, which is really, really where we want to be. So I'll leave it there for that. Obviously, a pretty straightforward episode. It was very average. It wasn't anything too mind blowing. The tribal council didn't take too long because it seemed pretty straightforward. It seemed like it was gonna be Mariana, it was gonna be Mariah, and there's really nothing else. And of course, it was a unanimous vote, so it didn't have. I mean, Mariah, Mariana was going crazy talking about everything, how much fun she's having, and how over the top she is. And Mariah kind of rolled her eyes at her a little bit, which I get. But and obviously, everybody, I think the internet really loves Marianne, but they also don't have to live with her. So, if you had to live with her and you had, people are rude before they have coffee in the morning. Imagine having no food, no sleep, no coffee, and having somebody who's at a 100% all day every day. You'd probably lose it. So, either way, so it was a very basic episode. I wouldn't say it was my favorite, but either way, hopefully you got something out of this show, this podcast, and hopefully hopefully it was meaningful for you. I know that sometimes the shows are kind of just bland. We have to kind of talk about them together, and kind of be our support group when the shows aren't great. But the premiere was really good, and hopefully next week will be good. There's supposed to be some interesting things happening next week with the challenges and the health situation with the challenge, which is interesting. So we'll see how that goes. For now, we'll leave it there. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing, sharing the post, telling your friends. Check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/PaperMoreProductions. You can email the show directly at papermoreproductions@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for all the other shows we're getting out and all the fun. I said we'll try to have some guests on. Jessica will be on at some point, I'm sure. I'm going to try to have B back on as well, coming up here maybe next week or the week after. I'm trying to get our schedules to align so we can do that. So it's not just me all the time, because it's 2.5 brains and you only get half it right now. So definitely want to get more guests and other people on the show to share their opinions. My opinions are my opinions, and other people have other opinions that sometimes are more interesting, at least. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. And obviously, as soon as we get the shows out, you'll get them right away. Thanks for being a part of it. Thanks for listening, and as always. And until next time, I know I got nothing else for you, because the tribe has spoken.